Hi, I'm Dan from Just Records, and this is Remixing the Past. Welcome back. Sorry it's been a while. I've been meaning to do these like monthly, but life happens. So it has been a while since my last remix, which was Garter Shake. We redid one of their songs that was a demo version. It's available to watch here if you want to check that out. And this week we're doing Rabbit Skin Glue. Rabbit Skin Glue was a Seattle surf rock instrumental band. They've had one of my favorite gimmicks that I've ever saw a band do, which was add go-go dancers to their live set, because it's all instrumental and you got to keep it interesting somehow, right? So it was really fun. They called themselves the Rabbettes, and it was a good time. We had recorded a full-length LP 10 years ago. I think it was 2011 that we finished the recordings of this LP. Then did a remix of it for vinyl, and that was pressed, I think, 6 years ago. Here it is here. This is the first record I've ever had my name on that got pressed to vinyl, and I'm really excited to dive back into this one. It's a fabulous record, but 10 years ago, I was doing things that were very different than I do now, and we will see that in the mix session. And in case you're wondering, yes, the vinyl is pink. It's a fantastic foray into instrumental surf rock. I believe the title of the album was Pink Nightmare, and that's actually also one of the tracks on side B. Now, side A, to me, is the stronger of the two. Side B is great, but it has some strange mixing that I was doing at the time, and if I were to completely redo this album, I would need to spend a lot of time on it. So I really only did one song, and it was the last song on side A, Trespasser. And we're going to listen to that here in a second. So unfortunately, Rabbit Skin Glue is not a band anymore, but they were a Seattle band that was active in the mid-2000s to the early 2000 teens, and has some of my favorite people that I've ever got a chance to meet and just get to know. Chris Griffin, Greg Ashland, Ricky Heron, and then they had two different drummers. There's one drummer, John Hiley, and the second drummer, Rocky, and I forget his last name. I apologize, Rocky. John is on the first half of the album, and Rocky's on the second, and they're two completely different types of drummers. John is way more of a rock drummer, and Rocky was more of a jazz style drummer, so you can hear the difference in the percussion in both sides of the record. Now, I don't believe the record is available streaming anywhere. I think it's only available vinyl, and there might still be some copies left. So I will try to put a link in the description to, if you are interested in purchasing this record. It's a limited release. There's not many of them, and it's a fun record. I'm glad I was a part of it, such a big part of it. But I wanted to get an opportunity to revisit it and kind of enhance the mix from where it was. Let's go take a look. So here we are, remixing the past with Rabbit Skin Glue, Trespasser. A couple of things to point out right away is, I had it originally written as Trespassing, not knowing that it's supposed to be Trespasser at the time. This album was actually recorded in the back of an Artist and Craftsmen, which is where two of the members worked at the time. And we had the guys all live. It was a completely live album, and they were separated apart from each other. That way there was as minimal bleed as possible, but you can still hear the other instruments on the on each track, just not as much on some or another. This was also done during a time when I didn't have the same type of microphone setup as I do now, so I was using, I believe, like an Audio-Technica drum mic package, and I do believe it was SM57s on the guitar cabinets, which is still what I use, and I think there was a pair of overheads that I still use. I essentially have a whole different drum microphone setup now. But regardless, this is the original mix that we did, that I did for the vinyl record. And there's a couple things already I can tell that, I would not do anymore. But let's give it a quick listen. So it's a pretty rockin' song. It's got a good beat to it. It's got a good guitar riff, but already you can already tell what's wrong. Booyah! Here we are, major clipping. Let this be a lesson to beginner engineers who are trying to get the loudest sounds possible out of their recordings. Don't do it. Essentially, you should be recording where these things are barely touching, right here or in this area, or even down here is fine. Now, I'm not going to say that you have to do that or else it'll suck, but I'm saying that it is advisable to make sure that your mixes and your tracking is not going into the upper yellow. Keep that in the green and barely touching yellow if you can. In the long run, you'll give yourself way more headroom. Right now, there is no headroom here. So there's major things that are going wrong. Now, let's see here. What kind of plugins we're using? We're just using, looks like stock compressor, stock EQ, another compressor. Same deal, just stock EQs and compressors across the board. And there's a little bit of panning here. We've got the hi-hat panned to the right. We've got overheads, racks, and the guitars are panned opposite of each other, and the tambourine's right up the middle. Now, all this has got to change, and that's okay, because you know what? We did a change. Also, something during my remix that I discovered was, I guess I didn't have any tom microphones, because these tom mics that I have here are not rack microphones. They are a copy paste of the overheads. And I don't know, maybe I was just trying to highlight the toms themselves, but what I'm really seeing here is some unnecessary duplication. So let's step away from this while rocking mix, very wrong mix, and let's open up something else. Let's remix the past on this one. Okay, so here is the touched up remixed version of Trespasser. And already, just looking at these WAV files, it already looks way healthier. Here's the print. That's okay, we don't need to worry about that right now. Let's take a look at, look, color coordination. That's beautiful. Gotta love it when you can identify the things you're working with without having to search for all the same looking defaulted track colors. So, all right. It's basically the same kind of setup with a couple of differences, a couple of really key differences here. Now, all the waveforms have been gain staged a little bit better. They should have been gain staged at the initial, because if you remember in gain staging, that's when we set our sensitivity of our input into how much we're tracking, how much signal we're tracking into our DAW. I had these maxed out at the time, and that's just it's improper usage of gain staging and improper headroom. That way, now we can actually work with what we got. But I did a couple things that I didn't have at the time, which if we look here at some of my inactive tracks, let's see what we have here. We have the racks that were useless. Let's continue to make them inactive. Hide and make inactive. Bye-bye. Now, I don't need this. I can hide that for now. Something that I did at this time 10 years ago was it seemed like I'd been miking the snare a lot on the bottom of the snare. And while, this is okay to do, but I guess I only had a few microphones at the time. I had, I think, 8 channels to work with. So 4 on the kit and then the rest on the rest of the gang. So I had limitations. But for whatever reason, I was miking the snare on the bottom. And here's what happens when you have that. All you're getting are the snares. Yeah, you hear the pop of the snare drum itself, but it's mostly the bottom of the snare. So while that's okay if you have a top mic as well, because then you can blend the two, but I didn't have a top mic as well. I just had the bottom snare, and that's I've ducked that way down. And something I did here to help replace that is I added a sample. And I used, to do this sample, I used Stephen Slate trigger. And this way, this is actually the kick here, but I had actually printed the snare sample. And blended that with the bottom snare. That way it's going to have more of the effect I'm looking for. And for the kick, while the kick did sound fine, I noticed on zooming in with the kick, comparing it to the overheads, let's just go up here and look at the kick with the overheads. Here, this is a good one to take a look at. What do you notice here? I would say that is out of phase. How about that? The kick was out of phase with the overheads. One way to remedy that is you can actually take the actual clip and invert it, or in Pro Tools and then many other plugins in other DAWs, there's this little button here, and we talked about this in a previous episode, where you can flip the phase by just inverting the phase right there. So that way the kick is now in phase with the overheads where it should be. Now the kick didn't sound too bad on its own. But I really thought it sounded better adding the Stephen Slate kick to give it a little bit more of a rounded punch. Now it sounds like it's actually a little out of time. So let's, sounds like it's a little out of time, but that's okay. I'm not going to really worry about that too much. See over here. Oh, that's the snare sample. I can hide that. Tambourine, you are now panned. How about that? Oh, and speaking of panning, where's that hi-hat? Yep, hi-hat, pan to the left. I like drummer's perspective, personally, so. Oh, here's the bass. Now, Ricky is a fabulous bass player. Love playing with Ricky. I got a chance to perform with him a couple times. But what I did differently for Ricky is I actually ran his bass guitar through my 1176 Bluey. I really like his bass tone. I didn't really want to mess with that too much. In fact, after running it through that, I didn't have any EQ on it or anything. I wanted to leave it as it was. For Griffey's guitar, I did the same thing. I ran it through the 1176 and compressed it. Now here's the compressed version, and then the uncompressed version is here. And you'll notice that there is a correction here, and then this guy I completely got rid of. And this was a guitar fix. And before I really knew how to manipulate Pro Tools as much as I do now, what I did was I had Griffey just kind of punch in right there, that little spot. And I don't know why I didn't just do what I would do nowadays, which is just take it's the same riff. So just copy, paste over the riff and just correct it there. That way, no one's the wiser, except for everyone now knows. But you can do that. Don't make a habit of it too much, because especially in a live setting, you're going to have other microphones and other bleed, and you don't want to pick up something that's not supposed to be there. But in this case, it was just one little guitar riff that was off by a slight amount, and just copied and pasted, none's the wiser. And for Greg's guitar as well, I ran it through the 1176, and this really kind of made it come out more. And this, for both Griffey and Greg's guitars, they now pop. So let's have a listen. These guys rock. I mean, what else can I say? And I didn't really want to mess with it too much because the tones, like I said, are fantastic. I just wanted to beef up the drums, get a sample and blend it in there with the original tracks. Add a snare, reverb, just a little EMT 140, and add some guitar reverbs too, just a little bit, not a whole lot. So like I said, the print, let's get to the print. Now, the big difference between the previous mix and this mix is the print. I'm utilizing some of the outboard gear that I have now, especially the X Filter 500. Now that thing really makes it sound good. Now let's hear what that would sound like with and without. what do you think? Did you like the original version of Trespasser, or do you like the remix? I should be making the remix available. I will put a link to that as well. And if you want to purchase it, I believe the money will go either straight to Rabbit Skin Glue or the remaining members, and or to a charity. So we will donate that to the charity that I would like to donate it to would be Save Our Stages. That way that, you know, music continues to beget more music. Personally, I really like the remix. I think the drums needed that extra bit of TLC, and it was great to use some of my outboard gear in the mix, stuff that I didn't have at the time. But I have to hand it to the guys because I really didn't have to do too much as far as the individual instruments go. I didn't have to do too much EQ or too much balance, because those guys, they know their tone. They had great guitar tone, great bass tone, and the drummer is just phenomenal. He's a great drummer. So thank you, Rabbit Skin Glue. Thanks for letting me be a part of your release, and I appreciate you letting me remix one of your songs. And until next time, this has been Remixing the Past.